Sitting at the table with the rest of his family, Jerry tells Morty that he needs to get a job in order to support himself, on the grounds that Jerry himself worked several jobs as a teenager while going to school. Rick contradicts his argument by calling Jerry a debt-choked idiot and dragging Morty off to the garage, telling Jerry that he is going to show Morty how smart people make money. While Morty says he can hear Jerry crying in the dining room, Rick unlocks the door to the garage, asking Morty if he knows anything about the stock market. He begins searching for something in a bin filled with random objects. Morty supplies a fairly accurate description of what the stock market does, but Rick disregards it and pushes a small device into Morty's hands. He claims it is capable of predicting the future, which will allow them to play the stock market successfully and make more money than we could spend in a lifetime. Morty questions the morality and legality of such a device, but Rick says that it is perfectly legal and that all Morty must do is put his name, rather than Rick's, on the forms. Rick himself will handle the other details. Arriving at the International Stock Exchange, Rick tells Morty to stay close to him and follow his instructions. Technically speaking, he says, I'm not allowed inside this building. Morty's complaint about Rick's having lied to him about the situation are quashed by Rick, who accuses Morty of being unwilling to break rules. Their argument is broken up by the appearance of Professor Tock, a time detective in a multicolored plaid suit who knows Rick by name. After introducing himself to Morty and being mocked mercilessly by Rick, Tock states that Rick should not be here and implies that he knows why Rick has come to the exchange. Rick angrily contradicts this assertion, saying that Tock cannot possibly know the reason for his visit because time travel doesn't make sense. He also calls it a paradox and impossible garbage science. He also states that if Tock was truly aware of his reasons, he would arrest him already. Tock implies this statement to be a partial self-incrimination of wrongdoing, and Rick storms off, taking Morty with him and threatening to assault Tock over his time-based puns. Walking away, Morty tells Rick that Tock seemed like all right to him, to which Rick, in a fit of suspicion and anger, threatens Morty, accusing him of wearing a wire and selling out his family. When Morty, terrified, asserts he is not wearing a wire. However, Rick immediately relents and walks away, telling Morty that they have to register him before the offices close. After getting in line, Rick tells him that Morty needs to pass a quantum DNA scan, which will ensure that he is registering in his own timeline. After this, they will be able to do everything else from home. Morty is hesitant, having encountered Tock and having heard Rick himself say that time travel is impossible, but Rick assures him that Morty needs to do this to assert his dominance over Jerry. As the teller calls them to her window, Tock watches them from a dark corner. Sometime afterward, Rick and Morty's ploy has run successfully, and they are in the process of adding a $10 million glass and concrete annex onto the house. It bears the name Morty and Rick, Incorporated. The construction noise is greatly upsetting Jerry, who decides to confront Morty about it. As he passes the front door, he hears a knock. Opening the door, he finds a crate, out of which bursts a mechanical bipedal cat. Believing it to be dangerous, Jerry curls into the fetal position and begs it to take his children and belongings. He gives it the location and combination of his safe. The robot is harmless, however, and as it mounts the stairs, Rick walks through the front door. He has heard Jerry's panic-driven admissions, but he passes on insulting Jerry's cowardice, saying that living as you is punishment enough. That was dark, man. Real dark. As he walks up the stairs, telling Jerry that he has another $1 billion or whatever to make, Jerry asks if admitting that his demands that Morty get a job were wrong would be sufficient to convince Rick to call off the money-making operation. Rick simply answers, "I'll think about it," before leaving Jerry by himself. Tock then appears at the door, making another time pun and telling Jerry that as their problems stem from the same source, they have the ability to help solve both of their problems. Walking into Morty's office, Rick announces that Jerry is in desperation and suggests that it's time for phase 2. When Rick further suggests that they should sell all their stock, Morty interrupts Rick, telling him that he needs to stop using the word we. As the only name on the forms is Morty's, he has begun to consider dropping Rick from the venture. Rick, infuriated, reminds Morty that his invention is the reason he is as rich as he is. Morty responds by asking the cat robot, Katagami, to usher Rick from the office. Rick then offers to tell Morty how the device actually works. He admits that his previous explanation was false, as he admitted to Tock that time travel was garbage science. The device, Rick irately explains, manipulates timelines. In this instance, Rick used it to merge their timeline with an entirely separate timeline in which their investments were successful. Rick then tells a horrified Morty that the device eliminates the spare timeline, destroying with it all its inhabitants. Tossing the device to Morty, Rick declares that he is done with the scheme and that the blood of the vanished timeline is on his hands. Before Rick can leave, however, a deafening voice pours into the office, demanding that they stay where they are and stating that they are under arrest, under the authority of time law. Rick immediately knows that Jerry has sold them out to Tock, who is standing in the yard with a megaphone. Realizing they are endangered, Rick hastily packs a bag and pulls a terrified Morty from the office. As officers in a helicopter rise above the ledge of the office window, Rick orders Katagami in battle mode, and the robot grows to enormous size, attacking the helicopter. In a moment of relative silence, Morty apologizes to Rick for allowing the money to cloud his judgment. As they reach the staircase, they realize that officers have blocked their escape route and are climbing the stairs to apprehend them. Rick then sadly tells Morty that he is gonna do the thing that he should have done in the first place. Drawing in plasma weapon, he opens fire on the officers, who scatter to avoid the beams of green energy. 12 hours later, an alien news report covers Rick and Morty finally being arrested by the time police. The on-scene commentator, a three-eyed woman named Glarb, states that $12 billion in assets was seized from their estate by Detective Tock, who uses another time pun in a brief statement to the press. She reports that Morty seems to have orchestrated the entire scheme on his own, while Rick, when asked for a comment, replied, "I bet Jerry feels like an idiot right now."